I'm Jo Baldwin-Trott, and this is the Women Leading Show. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This is a show that follows up the incredible book, an international best-selling book, Women Leading More Now. If you haven't bought it, please do, because it's an epic book, but I would say that because I'm the editor. I'm very thrilled to have the topic here today is a very exciting and a very powerful one that I personally relate to a lot. But first of all, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Kim Adele-Platt. Hi, Kim.
Hey, lovely. Good to see you.
And Peter Turley coming from Dublin. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Yeah, indeed. Thanks for joining us as our guest today, Peter.
I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you. You kindly offered your services to help me when I was hosting an event for parliamentary candidates, female parliamentary candidates, most importantly. And on
That's
the very
right.
way back last year, on the very big topic of speaking, and obviously your expertise is in selling and how to really pitch yourself, your business, without selling. So it's like almost like the science of selling is how I feel your work is. So so thanks for coming on to, and also you are going to be an author in the second Women Leading book, which is very exciting.
I am. Yes. I'm working away on the chapter at the moment. Yes.
Fantastic. We'll talk about that in a bit. So
yes.
let's come on to your work on selling, because women, I feel, I've been networking with mostly women for 10 years now, and I can categorically say that so many women really struggle with not only selling their business, but also selling themselves. So I'd love to hear what you have to share on what you've learned, what you can see happens when with women.
Okay, well, let's not get bogged down in the whole women thing for the moment. It really comes down to human, the human issue more than anything else. And what I've noticed is, if we were to kind of, the television show Mythbusters. So if we were to look at some of the typical things that people say about salespeople, or even business people in general, take this person on and use them as a salesperson in your business. They could sell snow to the Eskimos, and they could sell sand to the Arabs, and they'll talk the hind legs off a donkey, and all those phrases that we hear. Now, what I've noticed in my time is that the people who tend to talk too much too quickly aren't actually great salespeople. Okay, what I discovered in my years is they are the ones that generally will get the most sales quickly, but have the most cancellations within 48 hours. So in actual fact, they have the least deliverables, if that makes sense, right? So I looked into this, and I looked into the kind of what's happening in the background. And what I discovered was it's when they don't really get into a conversation. They do what I call feature dumping. This is the thing, and this is what it does, and this is the way it works, and this is how it's going to look on you, and this is this, and this is this, and this is this, and then they go, "Do you want it?" And the people are looking at them are like rabbits in the headlights, going, "Oh, yeah, okay," right? Because we don't want, in this part of the world, it's rude to offend people and say no, right? But we'll say it when we get out the door, won't we? Right? I'm sending that back, right? So it's that kind of thing that I started to look at, and how we draw people in, and whether we actually relate to people, and whether people feel that they have our best interests at heart. Okay? And it was something somebody said to me one day, which I think must be one of the greatest cliches of all time. In fact, it's butt-clenchingly cringeful as a cliche, right? And it's, "I don't care how much you know until I know how much you care," right? You've heard that one before, right? But if you were to use that as a yardstick It's actually a very good thing to keep in the back of your mind. Think about the people that have been really good leaders and really good speakers over, say, the last century. People like Martin Luther King Jr. and stuff like that. They had a massive passion, didn't they?
Yeah.
Absolutely a massive passion. And it came across in their tone of voice. It came across in what they said. It came across in everything they did. But what did they never talk about? Themselves. They talked about, they may have talked about themselves at the famous speech, I have a dream, I have a dream that. But that was as much as Martin Luther King ever said about himself, wasn't it? He talked about the people. I have a dream that, students going to school in Mississippi or whatever, I don't remember the exact words, but the sentiment of it, will be able to travel together and sit in the class as one. Okay, so it was, this is where it is now. This is what I would dream of, and it's about, and you're all part of it. Do you know what I'm saying? Okay, now, so it's all about talking with people rather than to people, and certainly not at people. Okay, but what do we see in real life? What do we see all the time?
About themselves all the time, yeah.
People talk about themselves all the time, okay? And one of the problems with it, one of the reasons I believe this is that people want to be listened to. It's a natural thing that's in us. We want to be listened to. We want our opinions to be heard. Why? Okay, that's my thing. Why? Whose opinions have any value, right? So, well, what they do is they start off by trying to show their credibility. And we've seen it before, haven't we? You go to a talk and someone stands up and they could be talking about anything, but they start off with, this is me and this is my family and this is our dog and this is where we live and this is what I used to do for work. And this, what does it remind you of? Think about the most cringeful and most I don't know what the word kind of least interesting evening you've ever spent is when you've gone to somebody's house for dinner and you've had a lovely chat, you've had a lovely dinner and a bottle of wine or whatever it happens to be, and the next thing they say, we must show you our holiday snaps. And you go, oh no, here they come, right? And they just prattle on, and this is us doing this is us doing that, and within 2 minutes, you're looking out the window and trying to pretend that you're interested, and everything in the back of your brain is going, get me out of here, Now, how often have you felt like that when somebody stands up to give a speech?
Yeah, happens a lot.
If we were to say, honest, out of every 10 times you've seen somebody give a speech.
Well, yeah, I remember the PSA, and actually, not right now, but I have been a member of PSA for years, and it happens a lot. And I must admit, you do switch off because you think, oh God, I know what's coming, and it's funny how you actually you do want to hear it, but the way it's delivered, it's actually, oh God, I just want to hear what you've got to give me. I want to hear the value, what I can take, and
yes, you want to hear it's the we're broadcasting now, and it's the old radio, the another cliche, WIIFM. What's in it for me? And we're familiar with that, and we want to hear that. But I believe there's more to it than that. We don't want people to just stand up and go, right, here's what's in it for you. Right? I don't believe that works either, going straight into it. But if you're going to lead, anybody going to lead people needs to get their passions riled up, get what's happening in their subconscious, not their subconscious mind, working for them. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's and we need to disrupt their thought patterns. at the very start, okay? Because think about it, people come and they sit down at something, or they're on a Zoom, as we are nowadays, listening to whatever's going on and listening to the talk. But there's a million and one things happening in our heads, isn't there?
Mm.
You know, did I leave the oven on? Is the iron burning through the ironing board? Are the children wrecking the house? And is that the sound of the TV going through the window that I've just heard, or whatever?
Especially working
so,
from home. Yeah.
so we sit down to stuff and we're not really listening. Okay. So for somebody to grab somebody's attention, they've got to do something slightly unexpected.
Mm.
And the easiest way, I believe, to do something unexpected to grab somebody's attention is ask a question or two that draws people in, that speaks not to their conscious, but speaks to their subconscious. Okay. And also speaks in a way that they recognize.
Mm.
Okay. So I'll give you an example of that. I was recently speaking at an online conference, and as you've said, I do normally speak on sales. Now, most people, what would earn more money, close more sales, be more like Arthur Daly. That's the usual kind of thing that we hear, isn't it? But I just stopped and I just looked at them and I went, do you feel you're not getting the results you deserve at the moment? Do you think you spend more time talking about getting work than actually getting and doing the work that you love? Do you feel it's quite hard in the current climate with COVID to make a profit? Now take a moment. How would it feel to have a steadier stream of high-paying clients? What would it mean to have the time to spend doing what you love doing and get paid for it instead of going out looking for it? And how would it feel to have a bank account that you're no longer afraid to look at? Now, is that what you would expect normally to hear when somebody stands up in front of you?
Mm.
No, right? Did it speak to you?
Yeah.
Did it feel like it was actually written just for you?
Not particularly, but I get the energy behind it.
You get the energy behind it. But
Yeah.
most people will recognize themselves in one or
One
other
of
of those
them.
questions,
Yeah.
won't they?
Yeah.
Right? And that will get, and what happens is because it's unexpected, it's a little bit, maybe I should listen to a bit more of this, right?
Mm.
But what have you now got? You've now got people's attention. It's different. It's a more, certainly it gets into the subconscious. Okay. There's an element of empathy in it. Okay. Now, that's a great way to start. And now you have people thinking about what their issue is. Okay. Now, if it was in politics, if it was leading a group for doing their aerobics or whatever, questions like that matter immediately get people's attention. And you lead in from that. And what does it start to do is people will look at it and they go, they understand. They think like I do, right? Because how often do we feel disassociated from people, especially in governments or whatever? They talk about, it's terrible hardship on the people, this current COVID climate, and people not able to work. And you're looking at them on the telly going, what do you know about not working? What do you know about not having a salary? Right? So you feel detached from them. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Okay. So it's by opening up like this. But as I say, what do we see happening in the real world is people don't open talks like that. They don't speak to people like that. They don't even use that in their writing of their blogs or whatever. Okay. So what I'm saying is we need to be more in tune with the people we want to talk to. We need to be less inclined to open with our holiday snaps. Okay. If people feel that we understand what they're going through and we can lead them beyond it, they will start to follow us. Okay? But you have to get them to want to follow us before we show that we're the person that can get them there. Okay? Let's imagine, for example, you wanted to climb Mount Everest. And you get to base camp and you see the snow and the cold and the steepness of the hills heading up away from you. What's the first thing you'll then decide to do? Look for a guide, look for a Sherpa, find someone who's been there before to get you safely up there. But you won't look for them unless you really want to get up to the top. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, and that's what a leader's job is, to take somebody by the hand and bring them through the difficult and the dangers and all that kind of stuff. Okay, but there's no point offering to lead them till they want to be led, to want to get to the top. Okay, like let's say where do you live, Joe? You told me you live on the south coast of the UK, by the sea. Okay. If some fellow was walking down the boardwalk or walking down the seafront and came up to you and said, do you fancy having a guide to bring you up Mount Everest? What would you say? No, thanks. Because it's not on your radar. You with me? Okay. So we get people coming along and they offer us stuff and they offer us this and we can bring you to here. It's not on your radar. Okay. So it's about subtly bringing in the radar. Okay. And then once it's on the radar, it's about, so what is it that you need? What is it you need help with? Where do you want to get to? What would it mean if we got you there? Okay. Well, what I call that bit is you need to have a little bit in it that's finding the hole in the sock.
Well,
Okay.
this is really true and very relevant to what Kim Adele's doing at the moment, because you're having your first international imposter syndrome day, aren't you?
Yeah, and actually, you know, a large part of it is, you know, I spent 25 years in sales, and I felt like a massive imposter. I'd been a hairdresser. I'd got an MVQ in hairdressing. I made it to the boards of the FTSE 250 and thought they're going to find out. They're going to go, oh my God, put the hairdresser on the board, get her off. But yes. I think the reason that I made my career successful is the thing they taught me when I was a hairdresser is that at our base, every single person wants to be listened to, they want to be understood, and they want to be respected. So actually, you go into every interaction as a hairdresser seeking to understand. It's not about you, it's about them. What's important to you? What are you looking for? What do you want me to be able to do? And actually, I remember once standing up, I was head of sales for a large UK company, and stood up at their conference and said, the first thing you need to understand is nobody actually wants our product. And I could see my boss, like, literally the colour drain, and him going, what on earth is she talking about? And I was like, well, the first thing you have to understand is whether or not you're a want or a need. And we're an accounting software company. So unless you're an accountant, you didn't go into business to be an accountant. So don't try and create a want. There's not going to be one. There's a need. A bit like a mortgage. You don't want the mortgage, you want the house, you don't want the loan, you want the car. I said, so what you've got to understand first is, what problem are you solving? Is it somebody's want or is it somebody's need? Because until you know that, you're not going to be able to have the right conversation. And actually, you just need to ask more questions, because the more questions you ask, actually the client, to your point, gets it on their radar. They realise that either they've got a want or a need, and then they want a solution. They want someone who's going to help. And that's the same if you're leading. You've got to understand what your people want or need and deliver it. But one of the things that I've found that is, you know, the last 30 odd years of doing this, is that inner imposter gets in the way. And often we kind of cover up our imposter by talking about what we can do first. We want to demonstrate capability. But actually, that's just our lack of confidence shouting out. And we've not given people a safe space to be able to talk about the fact that sometimes we don't feel like we know what we're doing, or we feel like a fraud, or we feel like someone's going to come along and go, what on earth do you know? What gives you the right to be able to have that conversation. Joe and I were chatting about this before we came on. I've had imposter syndrome for years, which makes me laugh because I've now decided to go and launch International Imposter Syndrome Awareness Day. I'm like, your imposter is screaming at me, why you, why you? But the reality is nobody else is doing it, why not me? Because all we're wanting to do is raise that awareness, but it's how we help people to overcome that fear, isn't it? To get past that fear that people are going to go, what gives you the right, and say, well, actually nothing gives me the right apart from my absolute passion to ensure that nobody feels the way I felt for the last 30 years. And that if they do feel like that they can get the help I got. That's the only reason I'm doing it. And therefore, if I can help one person, I'll do it. And I think you're right. You've got to get that. Your purpose has to be not about you. It has to be about them.
Of course it does. Yes. Absolutely. And that was that you talk about a brilliant segue into what I was going to bring up next. You said there about, nobody wants the mortgage, they want the house. Nobody wants, the car, the monthly payment, but they want the car, right? But it's actually knowing the next step. And remember, I talked about the cliches at the very start of this, right? And again, I don't know how many times we've heard this one, right? And it's been in books and it's been in everything. And nobody wants a 1/4-inch drill bit. They want a 1/4-inch hole, right? How many times have you heard that one? It's nonsense, right? It's one of these things that I go, the person wasn't able to think far enough. Think about this. You've just decorated your living room. You've got all the paint done and you've put the new shelving units up and you're standing there and you go, darling, come here for a second. Come here. I've been thinking, do you know what this room needs over there in the corner? It needs a 1/4-inch hole. Like, nobody thinks that way, right? They think what we need over there in that corner is the picture of your mother, or the picture of, the kids and their graduation day, or a nice shelf unit with whatever on it, right? That's what people want, right? So, but unless we can understand what it is that people want at the end of the journey, we can't talk to them about it. So that's the first thing, right? And where I see, and I totally agree with what you're saying, Kim, about the imposter syndrome, is that I believe part of it, okay, is a lack of preparedness, in that the people have read the books and they've read the cliche, I won't go talk about the drill, I'll talk about the hole. And that's as far as they go. But if they actually understood that it's the shelf unit or the picture or whatever it is up at the end, that would be a more compelling thing to talk about, okay? That would draw people in, all right? But because they have this, as you said, I'm going to be found out, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be that, they launch into, I've got to make myself credible first. And this is me, this is it, this is what I've done, this is it, right? It's dreadful, okay? Now, through no fault, because that's what we see generally on a daily basis, people look at this and they go, that must be the way you do it. Without actually thinking, well, does that speak to me when I hear it? Right? Do you know what I'm saying? Right? And if it doesn't speak to you when you hear it, why would you copy that? Okay. Now, when it comes to women doing it, and please take this in the way it's meant, okay? There's nothing bad meant by it. But because of the traditional, people it's only in the last 100 years, say, in politics, that women have really begun to get involved. It's not even much longer than that women had a vote and all that kind of thing, right? Now, I'm not condoning that, by the way. I'm just saying that's the way it was. There's a feeling, I think, of wanting to catch up really quickly. There's a feeling of wanting to get onto the level playing field, or even surpass the level playing field really quickly. So what we see this launch into trying to create the credibility first. If I don't create the credibility, they won't listen to what I have to say afterwards. Okay. And it's that launch into, what did I call it? The holiday snaps scenario. Okay. And unfortunately, instead of creating credibility, it creates this cold, the standoffishness. Does that make sense to you guys? And it's trying to find a way to say, okay, how do we take the best of all the bits, including the imposter syndrome bit, and lay it out in such a way that when the time comes that it's right, all you're doing is saying, do you want to come with me on this journey? I've been on it before. This is what you want to get to, right? If you were to go back to the cliche, you want some shelves? You want a picture in the corner of your living room? Well, here are some shelves I've done earlier. Here are some pictures I've hung before. Do you like the way they're hung? Yes. Come with me and we'll get you your pictures. You with me? And it's having that, okay? And understanding, like, if as nature has, this is the way I always look at it, as nature has it, like, forget about modern day, right? Let's imagine we live back in the days of the caves, right? Nature has us here for what reason? Whether we're male or female, whether we're human beings, nature intends us to do one thing. What is it?
Keep making more humans.
Keep making more humans, exactly. And what is the most important job that we do?
Look after ourselves and each other.
Look after ourselves, and most importantly, look after our children. Have you both got children?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. When your children are roughly 18 months old, what's the most important job that you do?
Teach them to walk.
Teach them to walk. Yeah, you kind of help teach them to walk, right? But they'll get up and start doing it anyway, won't they? There's something inherently built into us that makes us want to walk at around that age. But what happens? We go 2 or 3 steps and what? Bam, face straight into the corner of a wall or straight into the side of a door or into the fireplace or whatever, right? Now, and we see our children do that and we panic and go, oh no, they're going to hurt themselves, right? So what do we do? When they're in danger of hurting themselves, what do we do?
We warn them.
Sorry?
Warn them not to. Warn them, tell them. Yeah. Give them information.
The most important thing we do is we hold their hand.
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
Okay, right? And think about it, as they grow up, they get to, 8 or 9 years of age, and they're learning to use a 2-wheel bicycle. What do? We walk along beside them, holding the back of the saddle. It's the same idea, okay? We don't stand out in front of them and go, come on. We either hold their hand and walk with them, or we hold the back of the saddle and we walk along beside them, okay? Now, think of all the things that is doing, that nature taught us how to do that, okay? It's inherent to us to do that.
I think it's not just.
Where are we bringing them? Terry, go on.
I was going to say, I don't think it's just about holding their hand. I think the other thing that we do is we give them our belief, because we believe to do it. And actually, that's one of the skills that we've ceased to have as adults, is that we've got the innate gift of being able to lend somebody our belief. When we're leaders, we can loan our belief in our people that they can do something, and we can be there to hold their hand. But the belief is the most important thing, because if you can give them hope, it's the only thing that is stronger than fear. And I think for me, that's the piece, and I talk about this a lot, is if you ever look at a child learning to walk or ride a bike, I guarantee that there are people around them going, come on, you've got this, you can do it. I believe in you. And I'm here, I'm not going to let you fall. And I think for me, it's both. It's holding their hand, but it's giving of yourself, your belief, so that they can borrow it until they find their own.
Now,
That's a
you're
nice analogy.
100%
I
right.
like
You're
that.
100% right. And I think it's a mixture of the two. Okay.
Mm.
You would never send a child out to learn to walk on their own. You would never send a child out to learn to ride the bike on their own, right? You give them the belief, but you also hold on to make sure that something bad doesn't happen to them, right? Now, and this is the point I was going to come to next, and you're 100% right there. How often do we see leaders doing the equivalent of walking along holding our hand? How often do we see leaders giving us the belief that we can do it?
But the traditional leadership has been so authoritative. It's been, top down. That's part of the problem.
Exactly. It's been get
That
out there
is
and
the
do
problem, in my
it.
opinion. That is the problem, in my opinion. You leave school where you've been told what to do, and you've been led with this horrid, hierarchical structure, and that way too many organisations still have this. Our next guest on the show is talking exactly about that. That type of leadership is why we've got so much of a mess in our society and our businesses.
Absolutely. And this comes back to, I suppose, the point of what we were talking about here today was, how do you communicate that as a leader? And as you just said,
it's
Joe,
about your belief, isn't it? It's you believing that actually I don't need to lead from a place of ahead. I need to be by your side, and that's it's that perception, isn't it?
yeah,
Especially
it's either
politics, which I work a lot in. It's actually not believing that you are above and higher, and all these kind of adjectives for being somewhere different. You need to be with that person to lead them, and this is what this is what is really important with this whole women leading message, is that it's opening up this conversation that women and men can this is the importance of leading together. It's not about that anymore.
Yeah. And yet, how often do we see people who lead from behind? There's no inspiration in that, is there? Hitting you with the stick from behind.
It's a really good analogy. The behind ahead and by the side. We almost make a great book, I feel. Because it really simply symbolizes where leadership has come from and where it needs to go for us to be. But you're right. I've had managers and leaders that have been leading from behind, and consequently, you just don't achieve. You're not inspired. You're not progressing yourself, let alone collectively as a team.
I think you're right. Almost back to our kids, isn't it? So if you come up to a road, if I come up to a road with my little girl and we're crossing it, I will be ever so slightly in front of her to protect her, holding her hand and being at her side, but slightly at the front. So if there's going to be anything that hits, it hits me first. And that's always been my analogy about leadership, is I should be by their side, holding their hands, but slightly at the front to protect them from any attack. Because that is that's my role, not in front of them going, you've got to do it this way, or behind them going, you go first into the danger and I'll just see what happens at the back. And I think, for me, leadership that is my summary of leadership, is that I should be at your side holding your hand, but slightly in front if there's any danger, to provide you with protection, just like we provide for our children.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And really, it's, as I say, we see in the real world, we see people who have those leadership jobs and they are leading from behind, and they're not protecting us from attack. They're using us to protect them from attack. Okay. They're pushing us in front of them. You get in the way of the arrows there, right? And what I think some of the problem is, and I think it's a societal thing, is that I think too many people see getting into leadership roles or managerial roles or whatever you want to call them, it's all the same thing, really. They see it as a reward for a job well done. But you would never look at having children as a reward for a job well done. You look at having children as a responsibility. I think when people understand that when they get into these roles, it's a responsibility, not a reward, then I think we'll see things really happen, you know? And when it comes to the speaking and the public speaking to go with that, and the rousing and the bringing people with you, you have to be able to communicate as well, and you have to be able to communicate it in that way. You people, you are my responsibility. You have voted me into this position, or I have been promoted into this position, and I'm responsible to bring you with me. If people can get that across, and as I say, keep away from the holiday snobs, then I think things will begin to change. So I hope that makes some kind of sense.
It does, and a great conversation, really good conversation. I think that's so much relevance. Hopefully people will enjoy and feel that too. I think that's really, really interesting. And do we need to be selling? Do we need to see it as as a thing we need to do? No, I feel like it should just be a part of who we are, and we're here to serve. Why not stop selling with serving?
But
that's a whole other conversation, and we're running.
it is a whole other conversation. But yes, you're right. It comes back to, I am here to bring you with me. I'm not here to be glorified by you being, dragging me along. And I think that in the end of the day is the big difference.
Yeah. It's the belief in yourself. The belief. I love your analogy, Kip. The transference of that belief onto the people that you're talking and serving, and then the journey together, which is just the ideal. It just sounds like the ideal leadership to me. Brilliant.
Absolutely.
Well, there we go. That was a whole course in leadership. I think if you were watching or listening, I think that was a fantastic kind of little mini workshop. Perhaps we've got a workshop. But Peter, we will be having an event sometime this year for leadership, and I have mentioned this to you before, so would love to have you on talking about this, because I think there's a really within the topic of what your expertise is with this whole selling and this how we lead from the side and how we lead with holding someone's hand. It's a much nicer idea, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
Really great conversation. Peter, thank you so much for joining us from Dublin.
Been my pleasure. Lovely to see you guys.
Yeah, lovely to chat.
Really good to have you. How can people contact you if they'd like to reach out to you?
Oh, if anybody would like to reach out to me at any stage, if they want any help with anything, you can find me on LinkedIn under Peter Turley, or you can email me directly. And if anybody has a pen handy or whatever, a really difficult one to remember, it's himself@peterturley.ie.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Peter. And a very big thank you to Kim Adele for joining me and hosting the show today. Lovely to see you as always.
Lovely to see you too. Thanks for having me. A really interesting chat. Thank you.
Yeah, really good. And we'll be back again in 2 weeks' time. Thanks for engaging in our conversation, and we'll see you soon. Take care for now. Bye.
Bye.